G'day and welcome again to another Campfire Project discussion. I'm Alan Stevens, the host of the Campfire Project, and I have with me first of all Andy Bryce, who is an EFT master. How are you, Andy?
I'm doing very well, especially now with this group.
We've been chatting offline, so we've been having a lot of fun. And then we have Jerome Lamarque, who is a coach and founder at Get Performing for Business Success. How are you, Jerome?
I'm really well, Alan, and as usual, really looking forward to this discussion and being with these great panelists.
Fantastic. And we have Marilou Coombe, who is a coach, a mentor, and an author. How are you, Marilou?
I'm great, thank you. Excited to be here.
Excellent. We were talking off screen, talking about a subject to talk about. One of the things today with the virus, the situation we're in at the moment, the major thing is where are people's minds at, their mindset. So we thought we'd have a general conversation about mindset, how to improve our mindset in the current situation. So as usual, I like to get the thing going by pass the ball over to somebody else. And Marilou, may I pass the ball to you to get the conversation going?
You shall. I'll allow you to pass the ball to me. Hi, I feel really blessed to be here, honestly, having this conversation, and I really hope this conversation gets out to a lot of people. I love the energy of Andrew, Andy, and Jerome. Thank you. And I think we can offer a lot of people around anxiety in particular some information on how they can deal with it in the current situation. And for me, I've been pondering a lot as someone who did anxiety really well, especially when I had my first child, and understanding how that works. Even though, you know, my degree in psychology would have prepared me for that, you would have thought experiencing it was very different for me. And you know, coming with modalities like what Andy does, and I'll let him talk about that a bit more, was such a in getting me to rewire my brain and see how my anxiety was being met. Like it was a need that was being met by me doing anxiety, right? And I talk about this quite publicly because I went down a really deep, dark hole when I had my first child, and I had all these expectations of what all of that would look like. And right now what's happening for people, they're going, yeah, but that's different to having a baby. Well, no, it's no different, because we have an expectation of how we live our life. And that right now is being taken away from us. It's being taken away from us because we don't feel safe. We don't know what we can and can't do. We are asked to just be at home and kind of confined in, you know, in a space of 4 walls. And so anxiety comes up because it lives in the future, and we don't know the future right now. And so for people that have not practiced living in the present, anxiety can become an enemy, right? And it becomes quite difficult to become friends with that enemy. And it's equally like with depression, you know, in the past. So when we get depressed, it's normally because of thoughts that we've had in the past that are haunting us right now, because again, we're not being present. So I would love to, with the group, talk about how we can come back to the present moment, because come on, let's face it, right? The future was never ever really guaranteed anyway. It was always an illusion. Right now, that is really being like in our face, right? So I really would love to explore in this panel different techniques that we can help our audience kind of come back and be present and be in the moment, while still planning for the future, but really just come back into their center, so that the anxiety then becomes, you know, a smaller kind of creature in their body rather than this big whole thing overtaking them.
Yeah. And this is an area where you work, Jerome, with men and their mindsets. Are you finding that there's that's increasing, or the situation's changing now that we're in the middle of this pandemic?
Yeah, good question, Alan. It all comes back to your personality or your character as a man. So we've got from a sports psychology perspective, you've got trait anxiety, you've got state anxiety, and then you've got stress. They're 3 different things. And so, you know, state anxiety we all experience, but trait anxiety is more how much stress you experience based on your personality type. You know, if an athlete or a business owner is doing something in business and he's a generally laid back character, he won't experience the levels of anxiety of someone who's more reacts quicker rather than is proactive quicker. You know, so it comes down to your personality types, and depending on the business owner or the athlete you're talking to, you have to understand their personality traits. And this is really important when you're talking about anxiety. Now, stress is completely different. Stress is, we need stress. We need anxiety in some form to trigger us into action, but we also need stress. We can't grow without stress. So if you go to the gym every day and you lift a 20 bar kilo, a 40 bar kilo weight barbell, when you first do that, there's an amount of stress, and the stress is probably stronger than you. But over time, if you go every day, after a while, you lift that weight easily. Yeah, there's a form of pressure being put against you. Now, the weight didn't change. What happened is you got stronger. And this is the same mentally, emotionally, and spiritually as well. So you build more resilience through a certain amount of stress. So some of the guys I'm dealing with now are actually getting stronger in these moments because there's more pressure. The perceived pressure on them, they're responding to it. It's like this is their gym workout mentally and emotionally. So they're thriving in it. Other guys are going into survival mode. This comes down to their personality. So, and you talk to all those guys differently, based on what they need to hear at that moment, at that time, to get them into a good state, to get them to perform at their peak. So it comes back to performance, and stress is it's where you perceive there's a massive imbalance between a physical or psychological demand and your capability skills, where you perceive there's an important outcome. So there's all those things going on. So what you're trying to do is upskill the person to actually deal with those demands very easily. Then they feel less stress, which then they still might have state anxiety, but from a personality trait, their trait anxiety is lower as well, because they become more confident in their personality and their character because they've upskilled in certain skills. I hope that I've explained that quite well. So it all comes back to your personality, but you must have a goal. If you haven't got a goal, it's very difficult to be present in the moment. You must have a goal bigger than you.
That's it. Right. Otherwise, you don't stretch yourself. You're not pushing yourself at all.
Well, from a man's point of view, he doesn't know where he's going. So if you haven't got purpose and a goal, he doesn't know where he's going. So then how is he present in the moment to focus on what he needs to do today so he's closer to that tomorrow? Where you take away the goal and then you're lost. So it's very, very important. This is just my perspective. It doesn't mean I'm right. But every time I've worked with a man and they've had an inspiring goal, that everything changes in their life. Even their partners ring me up and say, I don't know what you've done to him, but he's much better to live with because he's got a mission now.
Excellent.
So, this is based on my study and my love of elite performance.
So, and that's when you're able to coach the people. At the moment, we've got all these people locked up at home. They've got the extra pressure on them, getting them to be, to look at getting a bigger goal when they can't even see through the day with what they're doing. They need to have some techniques in which they can do that. So, Andy, you've been working with people with the EFT system, where they can actually work on this and help change their mindsets.
Yeah, and 35 years ago, I when I was 35, I did a men's weekend, which totally transformed my mummy's boy to appreciating women for the gems that they are, but also just took all of my judgment about men that I had and threw it in the bin. Then I was involved for 10 years with a men's group, but now I mostly work, I would say 75% with women and 25% with men. But when we're talking about stress, for me, stress is the resistance to pressure. When I believe that Jerome is right. When you have no pressure, there's nothing to work against. It's when you think the pressure is wrong, when it shouldn't be happening. I think if if this is what is happening and this is what you think it should be, the distance between the two is where you're going to have pain.
Mm.
You know, the further, oh, it shouldn't be like this. This is wrong. I should get my Lily Dale. You know, that this is an example of what she thought she should have and what was actually happening being so different and not being able to accept that in the moment. So for me, stress is pressure times resistance, because the more you resist what's happening in your life, the more stress you're going to have about it. And with the tapping, it seems to work on an emotional, physical, and energetic level. You know, it's based on the acupuncture or the qi, and what we're doing is tapping on the endpoints of acupuncture meridians. So when you have an anxious thought or a worried thought or something triggers a painful memory, or phobias are often around the future, right? So you have a book of plane flight, so you go, oh, well, I've booked a flight, and now from the time they book the flight till they actually fly, they're in the plane suffering. And this is I've had great results in releasing people from that. So one of the things that I feel is important is to understand that while there's a lot of sort of lip service to the mind-body connection, it's sort of like being on the phone with someone, that kind of connection, but it isn't. It is like milk and sugar in your tea. It's one thing. If you adjust one, you change the whole amount. So Jerome and Marilou are working with various ingredients of that soup, but the soup is one thing. And yeah, exciting talk about this. I think that when we're locked in at home, the other thing, just quickly, Jerome, around having a goal. When I was younger, I had no goals. I used to think I was like a sailboat with no rudder. The wind went that way, that's where I went. And then I discovered goals, and I thought that improved things. And then there were SMART goals, like, but what I found was goals without a purpose can take you anywhere. And when you said mission, purpose, when a man or a woman, and Marilou, you have a purpose, when the purpose is clear to you, you can measure your goals against that. Does it move me forward? And so that's a part of my work too. Just
yeah, fantastic, Andy.
So when you're in that level of mindfulness, that's when you're able to work more on your mindset, that you're actually taking control and moving forward.
Yeah, just one thing about that. I think people talk about change your thinking, change your life. And I've watched people for 35 years fail at that because your emotional state dictates your thoughts. If you're depressed, you're not having happy, joy thoughts. So the greatest skill a person can have, I think, is the ability to recognize the mood or emotional state I'm in. And if it's not helping me, change it to something that's a higher level or a more productive level. So if I'm feeling irritated, angry, what is that? Why is that? Is it helping? How do I want to be here? Calm down. And then what happens is your perspective and your peripheral vision and your peripheral thinking opens up.
Yes.
And can I just add something on that? I love that, right? What I really want to invite people, though, as well to become conscious of is, you know, we talk about whether things are serving us or not, but just get really honest about when you are irritated and you don't question it and go, open up my mind kind of thing. It's like, how is this serving me? And really get honest about how it is serving you. Because I know for me, anxiety was serving me really well, even though I didn't feel good, even though, you know, my heart would race and I would be in tears a lot of the times, and I'd get frustrated with my husband and I didn't understand my baby. But anxiety was actually serving me, because what I came to realize is when I would get anxious and couldn't really move out of bed, like I'd get really, really in a bad state, my mother would drop everything, her very busy business, and she would be able to come and cook for me, help me out with the baby. My husband wasn't so busy at work anymore. I really got honest about how something that was perceived not to serve me was actually serving me.
It's that secondary gain that came from it.
It really was. And so that's why I say I did anxiety. I didn't have anxiety. I did anxiety because on a conscious, you know, level, it was, I'd had to get so bad so that I felt like I was taken care of. It's no difference with, you know, grief, like with death and the way that we deal with death, which I know is also another really big topic. And it's no different in being in this pandemic right now and how we are reacting to it. And yes, definitely when our personality traits, like I've used some fantastic tools, you know, for personality tests and understanding why I operate the way that I do. And that has a lot to do with it. So bringing all that together and understanding that, but how do we propose this to the normal, and I don't mean normal as in, you know, but somebody who hasn't had the training and exposure that we might have. Like how do we make that accessible and available and understandable for people who may not have had that training?
Yeah, so this is where these sort of talks come in, because it's the larger population who haven't done any work like that. You know, we've all been there. We wouldn't be where we are today if we hadn't been through some of those things. And that's how we've got our expertise, by being in amongst it, but then finding ways through it. And quite often that was going and talking to somebody. It was self-study. It was self-research. It's, you know, not just a study outside, but of ourselves.
Yeah.
And it's through being able to listen. This is where I believe most people get it. It's when they sit down and they listen to other people talking. And in this point, they also then take responsibility for analysing that for themselves and determining what works for them and what doesn't. When we talk about things like the shadow values and everything else, those secondary gains and everything else, then we understand, okay, I see that I do that because I get this, but that's not serving me. So is it really, should I be just going through this chain of events each time I do things?
Yeah.
And then reassessing that, which I think is important. Well, it was at least, you know, when I talk about that, I've got to remember I'm not talking for everybody else. I'm only just talking for myself. As you've all said tonight, and before this and also through this, that, you know, we're only responsible for ourselves. And we're going to make decisions in that area.
I think
Yeah.
I want to just say thank you to Marilou for explaining you were doing anxiety. And I explained because I got the most attention from my mum when I was sick. She'd make me chicken noodle soup. It's one of my favorite soups. And then, you know, I was classed as labeled as a weak, sick child, but that's when I got most love from my mum. When I was well and healthy and running around, I was ignored. And we do a lot to get attention and get love. And so understanding and recognizing our own patterns that we're running, even though they might be for the right reasons, they're not the right strategies for those reasons. And I think you're right, Alan, having these discussions, just people will have light bulb moments if they listen to the discussion. And the thing I really want to explain here, Alan, from how do we help people go through this? And it's like, at one point in our life, we did not know how to speak. We had to be taught how to speak. And I think what all of us are doing at the high level is getting people to have better conversations between their ears. Yeah, we've learned to speak to other people, but when you master speaking to yourself between the pessimistic and the optimistic personality within you, that's when you can talk yourself back into good actions.
Oh, I love that. I love that. In your ears, yes, between. Absolutely, I love that. I don't have a pen and paper. I'm going to quote that and put it in the.
But we have to practice that, don't we? And if we don't practice it, we don't get better at it. Just telling little Johnny in the last minute when it's a vital goal, a penalty he has to take to win the championship, shouting out, stay calm, relax, just do your best. You know, doesn't help little Johnny if he's not practiced what to do under pressure.
Yeah.
Because he hasn't practiced the internal conversations with himself and how to talk himself into a calm state. So
do you see why I do the work that I do with children though?
That's awesome.
Imagine like giving these tools to kids rather than waiting until you're 30, 40 plus to earn these tools. And you know, also knowing this, and that's why I do say making friends with anxiety or making friends with things that we feel uncomfortable with, because they are here to show us what needs to happen in that between the conversation that we need to have and pay attention to, right? Rather than, you know, there's a pandemic in the world, I think, sometimes of just, you know, this whole focus with mental health of, oh, like it's okay to not be okay. And it's okay not to be okay, but it's not okay to get stuck in it and let that be a driver.
That's it.
And that's, you know, I think that we do need to be talking about that and kind of going, it's mental well-being. So focus on the well-being of it, you know, and I'm grateful for my anxiety and the episodes that did happen for me, as unpleasant as they were. When I did make friends with them, it's also made me realize how I operate as a mother and how I'm building the beliefs for my children and how I respond to them. Do you know what I mean? Like, am I only loving them when they're hurt? And am I only showering them with affection when only they hurt, you know, or they're in pain? Or how do I look at myself and balancing that out?
That's it.
Equally is important.
Yeah. So I love the term that you said before as well, Marilou, about doing anxiety, doing anger, doing whatever it is, because at the end of the day, we have all of those emotions in us. I grew up when I was younger, got pushed around, felt like I didn't belong, and I got angry with people. And that's the one thing that stopped me from committing suicide, was my anger. And people said as I grew up, get rid of your anger. Well, no, it kept me alive. The anger, it depends on whether it's appropriate. So we have all these emotions in us, but we choose at different times to do a different one. And so if we then realise, well, why am I doing this one? For what purpose? What am I getting out of, you know, what's the secondary gain that I get out of that? And is that really serving me?
Yeah.
Because, as you said, Jerome, if you were that sickly kid and that's how you got attention, you're virtually pushing your immune system down. You're injuring yourself further. That's locking you into that negative state that then becomes an ongoing problem. And
Absolutely.
So, you know, the secondary gain, there's also other gains further down the track behind all of that. And at what point do we just let those control us all the way through?
And you're spot on, Alan, because that carried on into my relationship with my partner who I had children with. I got the most love when I was going, oh, I don't feel well, darling, and blah. I had man flu a lot, you know, and she would look after me like my mum looked after me.
But just remember, Jerome, man flu is probably the worst thing on the planet.
I agree with you, Alan. It's worse than COVID-19.
Oh my gosh, I have a confession that it will crack you up. My husband was quite unwell, and I'm like, oh, get over your man flu. And the poor guy.
Oh no!
Oh!
I felt like the crappiest wife ever.
Everybody lean away from the screen.
Oh, there you go, Alan.
It's man flu coming on. Where's your sympathy, guys? Come on. I'm looking for a secondary gain.
I'm sending you over some chicken noodle soup.
Well, the other week, I'll tell you what, this Campfire Project's really working. The other week I was coughing, and I was talking to Scott Carson down there in Melbourne. And the next morning, Kylie Hutchinson had just moved back to Newcastle, was on my doorstep with a thermos of hot toddy.
Ah, beautiful.
Yes.
Beautiful.
And that, the secondary gain of having that was that hot toddy was so good, I think I'm getting the cough back again.
You got rewarded, didn't you?
Oh, yeah. The hot toddy was magnificent.
You know what? I think that brings up a really, how we can help people watching this is, and this is Marilou and Andy's like really understanding this. When are we actually rewarding people? What are they actually doing? And how are we actually helping them, or are we actually rewarding them in that moment? And what is the difference between rewarding them and actually supporting and helping them? Yeah, you bring that up, Alan. I think,
See, if we've got a partner, that's where that discussion, knowing that the partner wants us to be our best self, instead of turning around and just putting us down because we are that way, but then questioning, well, you know, is that really the full thing? Is there another game? What else is going on here? And having a discussion that's more loving, we're trying to find the answers to things, not just saying, oh, no, stop behaving that way. Or the opposite, just pandering to it and going, oh, come here, sweetie, and here's the chocolate, here's the chocolate, here's the chicken soup and everything else. So it's...
Can I ask a question, guys? Oh, sorry, go on, Andy.
Okay, sorry. I been working with families for the past 5 or 6 years, and one thing I've seen is that there are very few families in the world who have a method or system of disagreement. If you go passive and you have to feel ill to get love, that's one way. You can avoid domination. You can withdraw. There's people who grow up, many of my clients have grown up in angry, rage-filled homes, narcissistic, that kind of thing. So children take that on as something missing in myself, not the parent. So we adapt to those things, and we create filters. Are you aware of filtering and how we basically we're filtering for information to prove what we already believe. So if we believe we're not good enough, then that's the things that we notice, even though there are hundreds of things there that might, show you different. So the family thing is, for me, it's a lot of us have grown up where we are not practiced, or we don't even know how to have a conversation that's oppositional and personal. And some of my clients don't even know what they want. A lot of the programs that people are presenting are based on knowing what you want. And by the time they get to me, they've failed a number of those programs. And it's where we start is finding out a situation like that. You have determined your life by how other people feel, so I can get along with them or not get killed. And you do not develop the internal process of measuring, do I want that? What do I want? What color do I like? What foods do I eat? So there are so many people in the world that, or maybe it's just my perspective because they show up here, but helping people discover what is important to them and the process of being able to choose, because emotional freedom to me is choice. And so we put a lot of, I was doing a talk the other day and somebody commented, all you have to do is feel good. Just think about good things. Well, if it was that simple, I wouldn't have a job.
Exactly.
Are you okay, Alan? I just love what is the reward now for some people in this current environment? Because there's always two sides to the coin. Is because just speaking to some of the guys, some of them are actually using this moment as a great excuse to cover up their biggest fears. And this current climate is like, well, I've got to do this and I've got to do that. I can't do this, and I feel uncomfortable selling now, and it's not the right thing to do right now, and blah blah blah. And it's like, so there is rewards for some people in this current climate, isn't there?
Oh, that's it.
Would any of you recognize any of them?
Yeah, well, I've been talking to a lot of people, and they're all talking about whether they charge for their services. There's been a lot of people who take offence if somebody's charging for their services. But the way I look at it this way is a lot of the people who are stressed out at the moment, they're worried about their businesses, they've closed them down, they've laid off staff and everything else. It's like somebody who's inside the bottom of a big pit and they're calling out for help, and somebody comes along to the top edge, looks over, sees them in trouble, jumps down into the pit, helps them out of the pit, and so that person then wanders off, and now the person who helped them stuck in the pit. And that's where a lot of these people who are giving their services away for nothing because they feel that, oh, you know, we really do have to help everybody. Well, you can't help somebody if you're starving yourself. Yeah. If you don't look after yourself, then you give the other person an inferior product. You're not giving your full self. So you need to make sure that you look after yourself, charge for your service. Yes, you might discount and everything else, but you always make sure that you look after yourself because you can't look after other people if you don't. As I say in the plane, when the oxygen mask drops, put it on your face before you put it on anybody else's.
I've used it 3 times with people this week, 3 times. And can I just quickly let you know, I was one of those people that lost all my income. I had a very nice income working only 3 hours a week in schools and, you know, kindergartens or whatever, and all of that wiped out. And I had to think, you know, everybody's offering free yoga and free Zumba and free this and free that activities. And, you know, in answer to your question, Jerome, like and what Andy said, you need to get honest with yourself. And you really need to drop in and work out what it is that you want, what is your vision, what are your values, what is your intention in all of this. You know, because even those that help, like when you go into, you know, charity and all of that, and people go, oh, you are so giving. I actually let people know, no, actually I'm not giving. I'm selfish, and that's making me feel good. I'm meeting a need. If I wasn't meeting a need, I wouldn't do it, full stop. And we honest with yourself about that. You know, so people were asking me like, oh, you're charging. And I'm like, yeah, I'm charging. And I had 7 sign-ups in 1 week because people are actually buying me, and I honor my services. These are my values, and this is what my intention is, and this is what I'm offering. And you know what? If people don't pay for things, they are not as committed and they don't show up. I don't care what anyone says. Like there's a level of, you know, and I give away a lot of stuff for free, but I need to replace that income of mine, and I need to look after my family because I will not be able to offer you that service if I don't. Exactly what you said, Alan, that oxygen mask needs to come on first for me.
I love what you've said there. What's the reward for someone doing that though? Because that's what the question for that the reward behind that. That's
so my rewards, you mean, or the reward for the person?
Alan was talking about someone coming along, seeing someone down in that well, and instead of charging, they go down in the well, help them, and then they're stuck in the well. What's the reward for the person who goes down in the well? So we were talking about the reward in this current climate for some people. What's that reward for them?
I think there's a lot of different reasons for it, but I see in a lot of people, it's the fact that low self-esteem of their own, they want to feel better. We know that when telethons first came out and people would ring in and pledge money, they found that the people who were offering money the most were the people from impoverished areas. The people from the affluent areas weren't offering as much money because they didn't have a need to feel better.
Yeah.
And so that was one of the reasons why when the telethon was over and they'd go to get the money, there was no money. That's why they brought the credit cards out. So while you're feeling good, you pay at that moment, because once you've gone past that moment, you've had your feelings of endorphins, you feel better about yourself, because nobody wants to feel to be the worst. They want to feel a little bit better than the other people at least. And so they get that reward in doing that. So a lot of people will be giving their services away, because the other thing is a lot of them doubt whether they're really there or not, that they have the skills. And this is a way of getting a better feeling about themselves, that yes, they're not charlatans, because the level of imposter syndrome, it's massive. But as I keep saying to the people who've got imposter syndrome, you only feel that way because you're not narcissistic, because you want to give the best, and you're probably feeling self-esteem issues over it. And if you didn't have those self-esteem issues, you'd be finding out just how much you do give people. It'll be higher than what you think.
Yeah, I love that, Alan. Yeah, so it's about someone. It's an esteem issue where someone has low self-esteem, where they want to feel good, and they feel by helping that person, it makes them feel better. But as Marilou says, and you say, is they end up it's to their detriment in the long run.
Well, yeah, because again, get honest with yourself. What is your intention behind doing anything, right? Self-esteem, but a lot of people are driven from a significance value. A lot of people do certain things and give away their time. And I really had to tap into this for myself, because I did a lot of charity work, and I knew because it made me feel good, but I was very aware that I didn't want to feel significant in that either. And so when you go into a significant value and always wanting to feel a significance, and, you know, people going, oh, look at that hero, or look at what this person done. Dare you to actually do it and not put your name or face to something, and see if it still feels as good to you. Like tap into, get honest with yourself about what is your intention behind any action that you take.
I love that. Love that. What about you, Andy?
Well, I agree with this. I think we have a basic drive to be seen for who we are and accepted for who we are. And at the same time, we have been trained, most of us, either through religion or parenting, school, that being concerned about myself is selfish. Whereas you can't actually, you know, going back to the well, you can't give from the well if you're stood at the bottom of it. So as I think Marilou is saying, that everything we do is driven by something to get something. And so when you discover whether that's actually serving you or you're trying to appease, you know, it's like, oh, see, I sacrificed everything, so you must love me now. Just like, you know, when you got chicken soup. And anger, well, anger, in my experience, a lot of people who have grown up in that make two judgments about anger. One is that it's dangerous, and the other is that it's bad. So if they have an angry thought, then they judge themselves as bad, like him or her. So yeah, I think we're understanding yourself and your motivations, and then you have the opportunity to adjust them to see if, I think I can only speak for what I've heard Marilou say, is she recognized her dark time and what she got out of that. And here she is today by recognizing and not resisting what was happening and who she was being. And now you're being much more who you want to be, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
So
it's conscious. It's about really conscious living. Like I know a lot of people, you know, relate woo-woo stuff to being awakened or being conscious, but it really isn't. It's just being really aware of what is driving and why we do the things that we do. And I get really passionate about that is because I want to apply that. I do apply that with children, and children are our best teachers because they naturally don't have the onion layers and all the conditioning and all the, you know what I mean, layers that we have as adults. So watch them in their natural state, and we can really understand humans so much more in going, you know, so and look, my boys have been my best teachers, I tell you. And I get wiser every year they get closer to teenagehood.
Can I just, I think about the children being teachers. They're also the adults that I get to work with. Is the opportunity is I'm working with people who, as children, were left to define and understand what happened by themselves. So their 5-year-old self and intellectual and life experience is what's created their understanding, rather than having, you know, I've had clients who were sexually assaulted at 5 and then tried to understand that.
Yeah.
And
I guess what I'm saying, though, I'm not leaving my children, though, to parent themselves or to take.
No, what I'm saying this for is that you are giving your children an opportunity not only to hear good things, but to say things, so that
absolutely. Like, so if my child has anger, you know, or anxiety or any of that, I want them to understand why, and I want them to be responsible for their emotions, and for them to have the tools to decide what to do with those emotions.
And you seem to make it okay to have them, even if they're so-called negative emotions,
well,
which I don't think.
But see, I'm a big believer, and more so than ever now, especially in the last 2.5 years, I've had quite big events happen in my life. You know, my father passing away, my mother being diagnosed with she's on dialysis now, like needing a kidney transplant. So we've had some big things in the family. My husband got made redundant. And, you know, Jerome, what you talk about with men, I actually really learnt that in the last 3 years, of men needing a goal and needing a bigger purpose, and, you know, drives men and how they actually function well. So the whole unit of the family, I've learnt so much in such a short period of time. And I do see it as a blessing, because, see, we are so delusional as a society, think that we need to be positive all the time, or that we need to be, and I've now studied, like, you know, Dr. John DeMartini did a whole 2-year study on being positive all the time, and he was the most depressed he's ever been, because you can't actually be positive all the time.
Too much pressure.
And I get a lot of parents come to me going, oh, you know, and their child comes up, Marilou, I'm going to be positive all the time now. I'm like, why? You're going to fail. Like, what the hell? Don't do that to yourself. How about you recognize when you're not feeling so great, make friends with that so you don't get stuck in a pit of shit about it, and then move it. And then that's how you get balance, because everything is yin and yang. You cannot have light without dark. You cannot have dark without light. There's yin and yang, but people get stuck in being in one or the other.
And if you just go to the one, all you're going to do, you don't know what the other side is. You need to know what the bad times are to be able to appreciate the good times. Exactly. But it's this push of, you know, having a right or wrong emotion. There is no right or wrong emotion. There are just emotions. It's how we allow that emotion, how we use it, or how it uses us. It's like when I'm profiling people, I teach them how to read themselves. We are looking at both the upside and the downside of their traits. And most people say, I don't want to know about my downside. I go, hang on. If you know about the downside, you know what environment goes into that's going to push your buttons. And then it keeps, if you don't know that, then it's going to keep dominion over you. Or once you know it, now you have the power of putting dominion over it.
Exactly. And can I just say something on that as well, just really quickly, because with profiling, when we understand these things, so I love this profiling because it takes a positive spin, but what I love about it, it shows how those positive traits don't always serve you. So I don't know if anyone have heard of the Gallup Strength Finder.
Yep, done that.
It's a wonderful tool, personality. It actually saved our marriage. It was wonderful because I'm an activator and I'm an action taker. They're my top traits, right? But then when you get somebody who's a researcher, let's say, like my husband, we can clash, right? I want to take action and he wants to research everything. And I'm like, just get shit done. And he's like, but just take your time and look into it rather than going from one bling to another. And when we understand that, so when I say to you, I'm an action taker, and you go, oh, that's a really positive thing. Well, actually, no, it's not, because sometimes I'm just taking action upon action and I'm not actually building on just the one thing. So, you know, anything about perspective and perception of where you want to look at it from. And you're spot on, Alan, nothing is actually good or bad. It's all perception, how we look at it and how, you know, we feel about it and bring it into our life.
A couple of things there I recognize is like, when you speak to someone and they go, I just want to be happy. And then you say to them, well, if someone close to you died, would you want to be happy in that moment? And they'd go, oh no, probably I wouldn't. Well, what would you want to feel then? Probably sad, probably a sense of loss. Okay. And it's okay to experience those feelings. It's when those feelings dominate you and you don't dominate those feelings. You know, if you go on for months and months and months feeling those feelings and using it as an excuse not to take action, that's a different conversation to, you know what, my mum's just died, or they're a friend of mine. It's like, you wouldn't want to be happy then. You would want to go through the roller coaster of emotions that you go through.
Yeah.
And I was just, and then the other thing was where you were talking about, I've just lost my train of thought there, where we were speaking about, you know, what are the rewards? Because I'm conscious that we're helping an audience here. What are the rewards that people are using in this current COVID-19 situation to not take action? You know, and a lot of them is hanging on to their anxiety. The universe has given me the greatest excuse to hang on to my anxiety, to do anxiety even more. And then if like helping the people watching this is, well, I love what you said there, Marilou. We do anxiety, and the universe has given me this opportunity to do more of it, to expand it even more. But it's actually, as Andy said, it's damaging our immune system and it's damaging our mental health. So how do we flip that and help those people in these moments? And just having this conversation, hopefully they'll recognize that as well.
Yeah.
Because you got to ask yourself.
I've been saying it a lot on my page of, please guys, stress and eating bad and not moving and not getting vitamin D outside is actually worse than any virus that can take over your system. I know right now there's a lot of fear of death out there from this thing. But please understand, people have been dying. And in fact, we're all going to die one day. That's the only thing that's guaranteed. Like, honestly, if we stop and think about that for a moment, everything else is an illusion. It's the one thing that's guaranteed. So let's make friends even with death and work our relationship with death so that doesn't, like, that fear and that anxiety doesn't have to be so, you know, now we know that. So, I just, you know, it's such a, I felt really guilty for a little while, that I felt so good when all this happened, you know, because I went, this is an opportunity for people to really reevaluate their priorities, to really have a think about what their goals and intentions are in life and how they live life. And hopefully this brings a lot more consciousness to the way people do life.
You stop and look at it a bit deeper, because people will be worried about, how should I be feeling in this moment? As you said, there's people dying, etc. So I should feel sad about all of that. As you said, Jerome, what happens when, you know, you ask somebody, if somebody died, would you want to feel sad? Well, people don't really want to feel sad, but they feel a duty to feel sad. But it's in feeling sad, are you doing justice to that person's memory? One of my mates many years ago, his wife passed away, and the wake that we had was full of laughter and joking and everything else. It was a celebration of her life. And even when we spread the ashes out over the ocean, the guys in the surf club took them out for us. They hit this wave and went airborne, almost looked like they were going to flip it. And mate standing next to me, and he's laughing. And he looked at me and he said, oh, she would have loved that. Because he was just thinking about the person herself. And so those memories were there. But we've got all these people at the moment thinking, well, I should feel sorrow, I should have worry and everything else. Well, and it's not trying to be, I'm different to everybody else, I'm going to be happy for the sake of being happy. But if I am happy, if I'm able to look at things, look at possibilities, opportunities, and I work towards those, I'm a better version of me, which means when I'm dealing with other people, I'm a better version for them. So it gets passed along. It's not just about us, because I think at the moment we're going to find that people are starting to realise we are not just a local community or a family or things like that. We are a global community, and people are worrying about what happens overseas. I put a little picture up the other day thanking not only the medical people, but the checkout people, the people who are delivering the food and everything else, because they're helping to make us safe by allowing us to be at home without having to rush around and everything else. And somebody put up a post about it, you know, thanking all of them here in Australia. And I went, no, thank them in the world, because somebody who's looking after the checkout in another country, and the person that's going in there is being looked after and not getting the virus, means it's not going to spread further, because we've found that even with the borders were closed, the virus has still travelled. You can't shut it up into a vacuum. And so we are a global community, so everybody around the world is in this together, regardless of culture or belief systems, religion, or anything else. And so if we can be the best we can for ourselves, then the actual thing is that when we deal with other people, it's like if you're happy and you smile, and people see that smile, they smile back. So if we just look at being the best version of ourselves, understanding why our buttons are getting pushed, why we're feeling these emotions, and what's the secondary gain out of that, how can we revalue that and have better conversations with our partners and have those discussions where we're being real about it. Well, I do get this way. Well, and having that discussion, well, what do you get out of that? What is it that you get from me? Therefore, how can I then deliver that to you without going through that cycle? How can we both be happier and healthier and both feel the way that we want to feel? Walk around with a smile, and that impacts the kids and everybody else you come in contact with.
Yeah, I think this pandemic is bringing out people's characters, because there are people who are being just selfish and terrible, and then there are people who are being brilliant and shining. So it's really exposing people's characters for who they are. One of my friends posted something positive and was attacked by people for not panicking. Like, you should be panicking right now. And to me, that we've been through that, why that would not be a good thing. So not only are we having relationships with people in our home that we're locked in with, and hopefully those are good, but we're also having relationships with people online. And I think we're teaching people how to treat us by what we put up with and what we tolerate, and standing up for kindness and caring and support. It's not just a home-based situation. It should carry through in what I feel in this group, and also in every communication we have by posting our talks. I've done a couple this week, and just helping people deal with building their immune system.
Now, before we wrap it up, what I was going to do, if you don't mind, Andy, I'd like to put you on the spot a little bit. And one of the things that we realise is that, we talk about thinking about things, and it's hard to just sit down and think when we've got our emotions right, because our emotions control everything. Now, if you want to change the way you're thinking, then how does that make you feel? If you don't like feeling that way, how do you prefer to feel? Tell me all about that. Use all your senses. Automatically, your thoughts are going to align to how you're feeling. And that's how you deal with the old thoughts, by not thinking about the old thoughts, but creating new ones based on your feelings. So for people to have and that's taking an action. So for people to be able to take, excuse me, a bit of an action, it's some simple techniques with the EFT that you can just show them now, that they can sit down and go through this while they're listening to the audio, etc. They can go back through it again, do some tapping so that they can take an action that helps to settle their thoughts down and get more constructive in the way they're thinking.
Thank you. That'd be a great opportunity. I feel that emotions come in waves. Emotions are like water. If you're at the beach and you turn your back to a 6-footer, you're going to pay some consequences. But normally, if you're at the beach and there are big waves, if you're there, you dive into it. You dive into it and you come up in the trough on the other side, and all the drama, so to speak, is behind you. So if you begin to notice that you're having a feeling, that an emotion is coming up, then rather than resist it, I think, like a wave passing, emotions will pass. They move through like waves in about 90 seconds to 2 minutes. So if you're just tapping on the side of your hand and what's this feeling? What am I feeling? Oh, I'm feeling anxious. I'm feeling trapped. There's nowhere to go, nothing to do. Everything we have to say, we've said, and it's only 9 a.m. And, I'm getting claustrophobic. I'm missing something. I'm missing everything. This feeling. What is this feeling? What is it like? What am I feeling in my body? What am I holding on to? What would I like to feel? Now, here's the points are here on either side. This is called the eyebrow point. And then there's the side of the eye. There's under the nose, which is actually on the gum line. The chin is on the gum line. And my personal favorite is the collarbone, which is just below where the collarbones join, below the notch, but on either side. This one is very calming for me. So except that I've had this feeling, I want to take the information from that emotion. What is it telling me? And now I'm ready to let it go. It's okay to feel. It's safe to feel. Every emotion is a good emotion because it has information. If it's anger, there's something happening in my environment I'm not clear on yet, but it's giving me a clue. We often feel before we know.
Mm.
So when we get an emotion, just doing this tapping, accepting the emotion, recognizing, sometimes if you have a mild, we have like a SUDS, 0 to 10, 1 or 2 is a mild irritation, 10 could be like a phobic reaction. Notice your physical, how your traits. Some people get choked up, some people get shortness of breath, tummy flutters, that kind of thing. So you're getting these physical things that tell you the body's giving you feedback. Your emotion is something we can feel. We can't feel thoughts, but we can feel the emotion. So for me, we build or create our reality with the vehicle of thought. But the fuel for that vehicle is emotion. And if we reject emotion, then we don't put any fuel into our creative thoughts. And we create with either passion or fear. And we've mostly been trained to be afraid. So building the muscle of accepting fear and letting it flow through and utilizing passion will create the reality that even in your own home, being forced to stay there can be a good day.
Excellent. No, so there's some good techniques there. Because one of the things I realised that while you're doing the tapping and going through that process, the thoughts are being slowed down. You can't think as fast because you can't tap yourself fast enough. You'd be like a jackhammer. And so it slows you down, gets the, getting out of your thoughts, which are, it's just going too fast. But to articulate it slows everything down. In the physical side, you've got the kinesthetic side happening as well. So it brings a lot of things together.
Yeah, it's consistent over 20 years with thousands and thousands of clients. And I've had the opportunity to tap every day for 20 years on 4 continents, in 12 countries, and half a dozen languages. And the consistent thing is, even if you're not using like the right words or the right correct things, just tapping for a few minutes will bring you to a calm, alert state, which is a pretty good state, right, Jerome?
Absolutely.
Very quickly.
I love some of the things you said there, Andy. I love, I love the way you simplified it. Every emotion has a message, and we feel before we know. I love that, every emotion. So it is sitting with that and recognizing it and not dismissing it. It's beautiful, beautiful. Thank you.
That's why I love EFT so much, because it recognizes and makes friends with that emotion rather than trying to stuff it away. Can I just, before we do end, if there are any parents, and even if actually you're an adult with no children around, I highly recommend 2 things. One is a book called Gorilla Thumps and Bear Hugs, which actually shows you pictures for children on tapping and what it's all about. I absolutely love it and highly recommend it. My 6-year-old has always been grabbing it for the last 3 years and does his own form of tapping. And Andy, I love your whole aura, your whole energy shows through because of the tapping, and I can't recommend it enough to people. So I love that you've brought that in and shared that with us. And also a movie called Inside Out.
Hilarious. Yeah.
I use a lot with children and families, and even if you don't have kids, watch it with adult eyes and understand how emotions work for us. So when sadness comes in, and when anger comes in, and when disgust comes in, and jealousy, understand when these emotions come up, how they are protecting our system, and how we can learn to work with them rather than against them in being our best selves.
And that's it. Some really great deep information there, guys. Really appreciate Andy, Jerome, Marilou. Thanks very much for coming along today and for sharing all of this.
Thank you so much for having us here. I really hope this helps a lot of people.
I'm sure they will. And Andy, thanks for letting me put you on the spot, but I knew as an EFT master you'd just have no problems with it whatsoever. That was my fate.
Opportunity I appreciate. Thank you.
And to everybody who's been listening in, again, you've got the contacts for these three people. Get in touch with them if you have questions. Listen to this again. If you've got just, because I left the tapping till the end, so you're getting that good bit at the end. Go back and have a listen to it, and you do the tapping technique while you're listening to the information they were sharing with you as well. Because at the end of the day, we're all in this together. It's about being able to work through things. You've got your family at home. How can you be the best version for them? And you can only do that when you're in the best state for yourself. So again, as you mentioned before, Andy, about being people worrying about being selfish. Well, I say if you want to be selfless, you better get selfish for a period of time to get yourself to the level so you can be selfless. So guys,
you cannot give away what you don't have.
That's it, exactly. So again, thank you very much for all of you being here, and for everybody who's been listening in. We'll see you on the next panel discussion. Bye for now.
Nice to meet all of you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye, Jeff.